Welcome to That Annuity Show, the podcast that will make you an expert in explaining annuities to your clients. Give us 30 minutes each week and we'll shave hours from your client presentations. Now, here's your host, Paul Tyler.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of That Annuity Show. And first of all, I want to welcome my co-hosts. Ramsey, how are you?
Excellent. Great to be here.
Mark?
I'm great, Paul.
And Will, good to have you on the program as always.
Good to be here.
Yeah, and I'll actually do the introduction. Today we're going to talk about content, what we should be saying, how we should be, what we should be talking about with clients. It almost feels like Groundhog Day. We lived the coronavirus. We sort of got to escape it. We're kind of back in there. And our guest is Teresa Leno. Teresa Leno is a former financial advisor turned entrepreneur and the founder of Fresh Finance. After other business startups, Teresa started Fresh Finance to solve the problem of outdated client communication solution for advisors to maintain relationships and grow business in a global economy. And so, Teresa, before we kind of dive into your backstory, just tell us what exactly is Fresh Finance?
Yeah, well, Fresh Finance is our production company where we produce a digital newsletter and content each month for advisors and agents across the country. That's us doing it in-house, working with marketing departments, advisors, compliance, so that we can provide client-facing articles to share with clients. Our thought is the more that we educate them to make better financial decisions, the better it is for our industry.
And how many advisors use your content?
There's a few thousand across the U.S. and we're branching into Canada as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, okay. To walk us through, how did you get into the business? How did you find your way to making content for advisors?
Right. Well, I guess I've always kind of been immersed in business startups, but roughly about 20 years ago, I went from owning a gourmet food store into commodity sales. And from there had interest in obviously stock markets, insurance products, that sort of thing. So my first job in this industry was as an insurance agent under Northwestern Mutual. And from there, went to AIG during the financial crisis. And during that time, a lot of stuff was happening. Obviously, people were unsure of the markets, distrust, starting to pull their money out. And my question to our corporate marketing department was, why don't we have client-facing information way before a pandemic or way before, something happens, a recession, so that we're helping to educate them on options. Don't pull your money out of the stock market when obviously it's low valuation. And what other things can we do in terms of insurance products to prepare them? So that's kind of where it started. And at that time, I produced kind of I don't know if you want to call it like a pilot project for them, and kind of introduced it to the company and said, here's a great idea, run with it. From there, I went to JP Morgan, private wealth management for a very short period. And during that time, realized that this is what I really wanted to do and get into. So made that switch, and here I am today. We've been around about 10 years.
What makes like a good piece of content? If I'm an advisor, what's my checklist to say, I should send this off to Will to read and take a look at?
I think it needs to be something that's currently happening in the environment, in the economy, or something that appeals to them because of a need that they currently have. If it's somebody that's over 55 years old, we know right now that a lot of people that are 55 and older, pre-retirement, are getting laid off. They're losing their job. But trying to meet them where they may be at in their life cycle of what's happening. Normally, we would have been coming out, and we still are, talking about, you got your child going to college, is now an appropriate time to purchase life insurance for them if you haven't before. Just all those financial and protective things that they may need and come across. So some of our content is designated by the companies that we write for to benefit their advisors and agents. And some of them we come up on our own. A lot of it's reading, Wealth Management Magazine, Financial Planning, a lot of the industry publications, trying to keep ahead of what clients may be hearing about in the media, which is kind of not always 100% correct. We don't know what they're reading, but just trying to get ahead of what their thoughts may be or what concerns they have at this point.
Quick question on that. I have to kind of put my compliance hat on here. So how do you interface with companies' compliance departments, and is your content educational, or does it depend on the audience? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, our content is considered educational content. There's a huge need for that in the industry. Generally, companies are producing their own market summary reports and that type of thing. But we work with the compliance departments at each company that we work with. So we end up submitting into their compliance department. Depends on the company. Some of them, I actually have my own login into their system. I know they're compliance analysts, and in other cases, it may be an advisor office or an OSJ office that submits for us. So everything is approved before we end up distributing it by the parent company.
And just a quick question, because I'm very intrigued by this. How do you gauge the success of the content? Do you get feedback? You get metrics? Like are you learning from what you've created and then pivoting and creating different things based on the feedback?
Yeah, we have kind of two methods of metrics. It really depends on the company, but within our own system, if we're managing the email list, obviously we have direct metrics. If it's a company where they're only using our content and they have their own website platforms for their advisors, the metrics are run through whatever that platform is. And a lot of times in those cases, those companies will tell us what's resonating, or they'll gather advisor feedback, or we even hear advisor feedback at times too. And they can email in and just be like, hey, we're hearing a lot about this. We're having a lot of questions about this from our clients. Can you draft some pieces around that? So definitely, we want to know how our content's being used and what the feedback is.
Yeah, most definitely.
Is there any difference in terms of either the frequency or I guess the format of distribution of the content based on demographic, like a 50-year-old versus a 70-year-old versus somebody planning for college?
It's really across the board. One interesting thing to note is that in some cases, we're the only provider, but in other cases, we may be one of a handful of providers. Our demographic as to what advisors are using our services more than others, it's typically 45 and up, at least for the publication part. The younger ones are more into social media, but as we know in the industry, it's an aging industry. We need to get more younger people in. Definitely the biggest read seems to be the articles that are around retirement planning, economy right now. And I'd say demographic wise, we're probably in that 35 to 40 on up. Readability, I mean, some of them are in their 70s. It could be an article on, estate planning or, passing assets to heirs. So it's really all over the board, which reflects the diverse population that advisors serve too, depending on their age and where they're at.
Great, thank you.
So I think one of the things that will always be in every advisor or agent's mind is, should I outsource this or should I do it myself? And one of the things that I should say there are several things that should be considered in that process, and I'd just love to get your thought process on it. What do you think are the factors that the boxes people need to check? If they really want to do a DIY, how much do they really have to get it right to do it that way instead of going with a specific service?
Right. I think it really depends on what that situation is for their advisor. If they are allowed to produce content on their own and send it into compliance, that's a factor. In some cases, they may have a compliance department that's open to it. In other cases, not. That's probably the first step. The second step, I think, would be, are you a good writer? Some are great writers. We on our team have one RIA that's retired that is a phenomenal writer, insurance agent, RIA, sold his practice. And it's great having him because he's worked in the industry. He understands the terminology. So I think that's another factor. The third thing is, do you have the time to do it? Because you need to be consistent. In a perfect world, it'd be great to be putting something out there each week, 1 or 2 items, whether it's an article, a podcast, a video. Our newsletter is designed that it's once a month, but we tell advisors, you know what, you get a newsletter with 4 articles, but you should be posting something every week if possible, or adding it to your blog. So I think those are all factors that really need to be thought out. The other thing is that if you are using a vendor, are you able to get that document from the vendor and modify it to make it your own? That I think is important. In the case of our relationship with Digital Agent, Faraday's Digital Agent, we provide a content library so an advisor can go in, pick an article, read it, modify it, send it to compliance. So I think those are all factors. Or do you want to just, you need content, do you just want to get it from a provider? And is that provider producing different content for different companies so it's not all the same across the country? And that's what we do, is that we produce it on a mass scale, but yet it's segmented too, where one company orders 6 articles, it's just for them. We try to also be careful regionally what we're distributing so that it's just not all out there in the same region, that everybody's using the same content.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a lot of hard work, and it's interesting when content is obviously very important in 2020 and beyond. And what I find interesting is that often when you ask in some form, well, how do I do content? You'll get answers like, just make good content, as if that's enough, right? It's first of all, what is good content? How do you get there? I mean, there's there's art and science to it that takes a lot of practice. So thank you for your perspective.
Well, yeah, and just to follow up on there, what's the emotional response that a good piece is eliciting? We live in this clickbaity world where if you open your app, you've got one, the red app clicks one thing, the blue app wants you to click on something else. You say one of the checklists was tie the story into something contemporary. Do you want to leave me excited? Do you want me to leave me feeling complacent, good, not wanting to call you? What's that fine line between creating a professional message yet getting somebody to react?
Right. It's a combination of both. I mean, in some cases, we'll do an article that's talking about something happening in the economy or the stock market. Why is it up during a pandemic when the economy's down? I mean, crazy stuff like that. The other type of content is where you present a problem and hopefully that reader goes, oh my gosh, I need to check my, life policy. An annuity is probably something I should consider. I'm going to call my agent on that. So it's really presenting a combination of pieces to draw attention to you as an agent or an advisor and getting them to pick up the phone. Also presenting yourself as an advisor or an agent as knowledgeable. That's a big part of it too. You don't want to pass out nothing but stock market information. I mean, very small percentage of, the population is going to read it day in and day out. You got to educate them, position yourself as somebody that knows you're an expert in your industry. So it's really a flavoring of a number of things, I think.
Do you find a big spike in terms of people that reach out to you for the services during volatile market environments?
Yeah, we've actually grown a lot during the pandemic, which sounds crazy, but a lot of advisors and companies together were like, we never really thought about this aspect. We're very busy growing the national brand, but what are we doing to help advisors in the field? So we've seen an uptick of companies coming to us where they're, companies with maybe 2,000 agents or so, and saying, hey, we just can't produce enough content. We know our agents are needing content, whether it's written articles, video, podcasting, and we basically take a look at what they have and make a plan. So we've definitely seen an uptick because we know people are they're at home, they're on their phones, they're on social media. They're doing different things than that they were a year ago.
You mentioned videos and podcasting. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like what a registered rep or an agent or a producer how they would approach that with you?
Yeah, well, interestingly, we've had some advisors that have literally taken our article and modified it slightly and basically went on camera talking about it, and ran it through their compliance department. Our content was already approved by the time they got it, and they're just basically filming themselves talking about it, in an office setting. Or another one, taking that content and making a little video using a Microsoft product and posting it on his website and social media. But I think, content is everything. It can be written, it can be digital, words, whatever, podcasting, all that stuff. It's the frequency of it, and that you're doing stuff in a number of different ways, because you have clients that are going to be searching for stuff or responding in different ways to it as well.
Yeah, I was going to follow up with that on just this topic of, because we have, some of the agents that we work with would typically prospect through, face-to-face situation or scenario, whether that's, in a seminar or some other type of interface. So what do you guys do for folks that were doing that kind of prospecting? And you guys, what are you bringing to the table in that arena?
For sure, the digital newsletter component, you always need to be sending something out to them via email to be in front of them. The other thing is that I always tell advisors, when they want to order from us, I basically check out their website, talk to them about that. But is it built as a content distribution platform? Are you able to upload video to it and deploy, social media or through a newsletter? What can you do with it? Social media is a big one for sure, because let's face it, my 72-year-old mom is on Facebook. She really is. And she's interacting with her cousins and other things like that. Twitter, interestingly, has gotten even more activity going into COVID, and you can post the same type of stuff on Twitter that you're putting on your website's blog. Just the visibility of being out there.
So I've got a question on tone, and there's a few reasons for that. First of all, there's always going to be a tension between tone and edginess and sort of compliance concerns, right? But I think that the reality of being in social media and creating content now is that, it's not that you're just competing against other advisors. You're competing against the entire internet, right? You're competing against all the other things that are potential distractions. So I'm just curious, like as you curate your content, are there situations where you've chosen editorially to be, a little more edgy, and how do you think about that?
We've actually done some edgy pieces. Case in point, when Bitcoin came on the market and cryptocurrency investing, about the same time as cannabis came on, as far as being able to buy into those types of funds. And we heard from advisors, hey, my clients are asking me about these things, and can you write about them? And I'm like, let's talk to compliance and talk about this. So we wrote about it as being an investment that is basically not regulated in the risks behind it. Mm-hmm. But a couple broker dealers, I submitted the piece, a similar piece, and only one declined that they didn't want to touch it. The rest of them were like, this is reality. This is where we're at. So kind of a little bit edgy in a sense that it probably was unexpected for the time. That was about 2 years ago. But we just laid it out as, for this reason, these are the reasons why, all the reasons not to, although cryptocurrency has changed recently, but I'd say that's maybe a little bit edgier. Tone wise, we always try to write in present tense unless we're referencing something from the back, happened in the past. So trying to get the reader to meet them where they're at today in the present tense and what they may be thinking about.
Yeah, well, speaking of kind of edgy topics, so just last 4 or 5 months. Wow, what a time in history here. Mm-hmm. What was the content? If I had been a successful agent over the last 6 months using your content, what would the best content have been, or the topics to engage my clients?
Yeah, I guess one of them, when the CARES Act was rolling out, we laid that out, basically the ins and outs, how it pertained to retirement accounts. That was a big one. Another one we rolled out was basically the economy. What's the Fed doing to help stimulate the economy? Talk a little bit about interest rates, which led us a little bit into annuities, that type of stuff. Ways to protect yourself, inflation risk, all those things. But do it in more of a, let's call it a non-dictionary way, where we're weaving a story and trying to get them to pick up the phone and, call their agent. Also, the call to action at the end of each article is, something along the lines of, if you have any questions, about annuities, feel free to reach out anytime. Together we can decide if this is appropriate to your situation. All those things that Will and compliance would like.
I was going to ask you what the call to action was. You said it already, so you beat me to it.
Right.
You're not just generally putting content out to put content out to be, charitably inclined. You're hoping
right.
that someone will read it and it will, spark an interest or have a call to action, like you said.
Right. And really, we view our clients as advisors and agents, even more so than the corporation in a sense. Because like I said, in certain cases, we're a vendor, and they can choose us or they can choose somebody else. So the other thing I always tell them is that, what we produce, the digital newsletter component, is branded to the advisor or the agent. It's got their photo, their logo, their contact information, all that's right there. And it needs to be kind of a part of their branding, consistent with their website and everything else they're doing.
Okay, now we're going to put you on your spot. Crystal ball.
Okay.
What should I be writing? What should I be submitting to Will right now to get his edits on? As you were looking at this end of the elections past us, but coronavirus,
yep.
We're staring, smack dab in the tunnel. Lights are coming out of the tunnel again at us, so we've seen them before. What should we be doing?
Yeah, honestly, right now, it could be everything from tax planning to, hey, you got till the end of the year to access retirement funds under the CARES Act. We don't know what is going to happen with the new administration coming. How might that impact your retirement savings accounts? Those are the year-end questions. And then we have some companies that have said, hey, can you produce something about, look at all the stuff we've been through this year. Have you put out a plan for 2021? What did you learn last year? Were you prepared with your insurance? There's a lot of things that happen, and I think Americans and people around the world are really taking a look at, what was my spending like before? Was I saving enough? What's it like now? What's it going to be like next year? A lot of unknowns, but yet it's also a lot of relief in a sense. The election's over. At some point we're going to get control of COVID. I'd say maybe more of a futuristic tone than a panic tone. So happy-go-lucky stuff. We wrote an article for a group on charitable giving, and just how that's gone up in 2020 across the board in all age groups. So a little more happy articles.
Interesting. Okay, you have some people here as hosts who are prolific generators of content. Take your best shot. Try some of the content. Ramsey, what would you? What ideas would you propose to the editor here?
Wow. All right, you're putting me on the spot. Look, I think would continue to figure out what's going on with alternative assets. Right. So you mentioned Bitcoin before. You mentioned cannabis. Those are realities that are here for the long haul. And cryptocurrency in particular keeps on sort of coming back in different forms. And I think that over the next 5 or 10 years, you're probably going to see certain cryptocurrencies become more institutionalized. And so I think helping people start to learn now and to avoid scams and other issues that might come down the pike in that space. Because I think it is vulnerable to situations either where it's simply untoward, or maybe it's somebody who's launched a business that's well intentioned but just poorly structured, right? So I think helping people understand that, ask the right questions along the way, I think is actually very interesting.
Well, and in the South Park's pandemic special, cannabis business did very well during the lockdown. Mark, what's on your? What would you like to pen? Let's see if it sells.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we're hearing a lot of from the field is the difficulty in terms of outreach to new clients and new prospects. Over the last several months, a lot of folks have been working very diligently with keeping their existing client base informed, communicating with them, working, with their changing needs, but trying to find ways to capture the attention of a new client base. Obviously, it's been challenging to get face-to-face for a period of time. A lot of agents traditionally do client seminar dinners. Those aren't happening now. So different ways to, I guess, draw the attention from that perspective to bring on board new clients.
Okay, Will. You actually see some of the submissions. What would you?
But I do think, from my perspective of what I'm paying attention to, I do think that there is a renewed or new focus and interest on life insurance. Most definitely, in especially in the younger demographics. There's some statistics out there that have come out recently showing that some life insurance sales for 30-some-odd-year-olds, 30-year-olds, can be up 8 to 10%. So I do think that's an area, and I don't know if it's just because of COVID or just there's a, kind of a broader discussion going on, but I do think that, Q1 2021 is an opportune time to kind of continue that conversation and see if you can, kind of keep the focus going, because a lot of folks, I do think that age group, I know that Teresa mentioned her target demographic is 45 and up, but I do think that there's a need and demand in the 30-something age group.
Yeah. All right.
Can I get another bite of the apple? Sorry. I'd like one more bite of the apple, because one area that has really fascinated me over the course of the last 5 or 6 months is in the planning space. And so one observation is that financial advice is migrating more towards a financial planning function. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that along with that is that the question is, well, what is the right compensation structure? And, there is I'll call it a minor movement towards flat fee structures in the financial advisory space. And I think that makes sense for a lot of reasons. One of them is it eliminates some of the key conflicts around advisors putting their clients into insurance products, right? So if moving money from stocks and bonds into insurance product doesn't really have any influence on AUM fees, right? I.e. by eliminating them and focusing on a flat fee, I think that is a better fiduciary formula for compensation than maybe what we already have. And then the flip side of it is, in the insurance business, is creating products that have payout functions that are less designed for, they're in addition to being designed for insurance agents where appropriate, also have payout functions that work well with advisors and planners. So that's an area that I would write about. I have written about already and would write about more.
Okay, yeah. So Teresa, you go ahead.
I was going to say, we have as well. I mean, when that whole, Reg BI thing coming out and it being in the news and stuff, we kind of laid it out there a little bit on, what's going on, what's the difference. The other thing is that we position annuities as an additional asset class in a portfolio. And we have never had any of our compliance departments or advisors or agents say anything about it, because that is really where we're at now. And even as an advisor myself, I never believed everybody's retirement portfolio should be 100% in the market. There has to be other ways of protecting that portfolio. So I think exactly, Ramsey, like you said, I think the clarity around it, the reason behind it. There are a number of advisors that I know that are AUM that do not sell insurance products, and they bring in their insurance specialist, agent that they know whenever they need something. But I think, educating the public as to, the what's and the whys behind it. Just like you said, I think it's really important. We've touched on it as well.
Okay. All right. Now, Teresa, be brutally, these guys are like, they're hedging. I want brutal truth, thumbs up, thumbs down from the editor. Okay. Headline number one, negative interest rates could be coming. Will they hit the U.S. shores? Is your financial portfolio fully protected?
That's a good headline for sure. Will hit the U.S. shores, or it's already kind of sort of here?
Will you be quiet for a minute?
We know that there's always a baseline.
Yeah.
Interest rates, bond market run, that type of stuff. If you're looking to make a bunch of money off of interest rates, it's just not going to happen right now. So, I don't know if you could use that headline, but that would be a will thing.
Well, we're talking hypothetically, and we're talking about education. So, but it is, it's a stark reality. And, I know Paul's not fear mongering with that title, but honestly, it's the reality of it is we're in a unprecedented interest rate environment, and it's impacting everyone who's looking for fixed income or looking for a fixed rate of return. I don't even know. You mentioned annuities as an asset class. We see a lot of people describing it that way, but where do you go? There's not many options left for you. So, yeah,
there's not.
Okay, we'll love them. Okay, sorry, Teresa, please.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Is this Shock the Compliance Guy? Is that the underlying title here?
Headline number 2. Since you said fear mongering, let me really make this one good. Hurricanes. Wildfires. What will hit your house next? Do you have your financial go bag in place? Are your financial papers all in one place where you can take them carefully with you and make sure you're financially secure when you get there?
Yeah, we've touched on that one too. A little bit about, having all your stuff in order, insurance products, everything from homeowners to everything else. Do you have a rainy day fund? Do you have a contingency plan? All those factors, a lot of stuff like that happening.
Guys, I've got a career here. What do you think?
You're on to
Sign
something.
them up.
Are you, Teresa, are you hiring any moonlighting authors here?
Sure.
It won't make it past any of your compliance departments. At least the headlines will, but maybe
might have to do a little editing there before I submit it, but hey.
Well, I know you want attention-grabbing headlines, Paul, but I don't know. That might be a little over the top.
Yeah, I'll give you the third one. Well, we've of course, in full, just don't write these headlines by yourself. Ask for some assistance at home when you're doing this. Coronavirus 2, dumb. What's the next? What's the next? Zoom and Peloton. How do I actually position myself to take advantage of the coming wave?
I think the headline's interesting.
I'm not sure about the content of it.
I might end it with, are you prepared? And then go into, protection products and what you've learned in 2020. And could this potentially happen again in the future? It could. Don't let your guard down. So
okay. We've got some potential.
That's offense versus defense there, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Paul had to go to the product specific Peloton, Zoom.
Okay.
Couldn't help
I put it all out there for the show. So what are the thoughts or questions do you have here? We're past time here. This was great, Teresa.
Yeah, I guess going back to a point that Ramsey had made earlier as it relates to tonality or edginess, is there a big difference generally in content and tonality and edginess, whether the communication is going to existing client bases or for prospecting purposes?
I really don't think so. I think you should always have a similar tone, regardless of who your audience is. From a compliance perspective, Will can talk about this, but if you are curating your own content, there's certain things you just don't do. I'm going to start with imagery. You never put a picture on anything that has to do with showing any type of currency, coin, dollar, whatever it may be. There's certain things you need to know.
No money bags on your content.
No dollars.
No fistful of dollars.
No dollars on a tree versus leaves, that type of stuff. And I think too, just your tonality in the words that you use. It's never guarantee. You don't use the word guarantee. All those types of things. You don't make promises or that type of stuff. You can always use other resources that are reputable in your writing, and quote people. We did an article this month where we were quoting a woman, an analyst from Morningstar, about the interest rate environment that we're in and kind of her perspective on it. We write content that's somewhat newsworthy, but yet more educational. We don't really want it to appear as something out of a newspaper or dictionary. But I think, always a professional tone, how you refer to Americans, not, anything that could be offensive or anything like that. I think it's pretty much the same voice, whether it's a client or a prospect. It has to be professional.
One last question on that is, so are people then taking it and personalizing it with their own, kind of inserting their own voice, or are they just generally using your content as is? Yeah,
generally, if it's a situation where their compliance person has had to approve it, obviously they can't interject it. If it's a firm, they can take it and if they have their own compliance review, absolutely. We know that our digital newsletter, before it's distributed, sometimes an advisor might put a little entry on it, just a little update or attach a market summary to it. But all that stuff, has been pre-approved. So I'd say more of them are just taking it and using it because it's ready to go. And it's saving them time, and they know that they're not going to get in trouble using it. It's been approved.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Ramsey.
Yeah. So the only other thing I would add is that, I'm looking for more sort of self-reflection in the content that I see, whether it's in social media or elsewhere. So I see, for example, on LinkedIn, there's a lot of folks that are advisors that do sort of funny videos about insurance companies, and there are other people that do, go the other way. And what I don't see enough of is enough sort of self-reflection. So this understanding that whatever business model we do have, whatever sort of part of the value chain we reside in, whether it's a traditional advisor, an insurance agent, et cetera, that we all recognize that our business models have to evolve over time as technology changes and people's needs change. And so I would like to see a bit more sort of self-reflection and less sort of finger pointing and pure marketing. So that's one thing that I sort of want to see more of, kind of across the board. And don't know if that's something you guys include in what you do, but one of the things that Dan Ariely, who's a very, very famous behavioral finance academic, one of the things that he said in the speech I saw was that one of the best ways to gain credibility is to give advice and tips that seemingly are against interest, because it demonstrates that you're empowering the person you're facing, with the ability to ask the right questions. And so I'd like to see more of that in our business, just generally.
Yep, I agree. We've had some pieces that have resonated very well. One of them was titled, I don't remember the exact title, but it was marrying for the second time after age 50. Yeah. That's, it talks about combining families, financial planning, insurance, separate estate plans, those types of things, but addressing where we're at right now as a society. Even same-sex marriages, considerations there, depending on, but always you're planning as a couple. You are a couple. Different things like that. When you combine families and there's children from both marriages, things to consider there. So I think it's really those humanizing articles and thought-provoking things too, along with the education component, I think makes a good combination for what somebody's putting out there.
Yeah.
Obviously, keeping politics out of anything that you're writing or personal opinion is huge.
Yeah, I think some of my friends on Facebook should take a note on that.
Some people can't help themselves, Paul.
Well, but they're supposed to be able to do it on Facebook. They're not supposed to do it on LinkedIn, right? That's
right.
the unwritten rule, right?
About LinkedIn. Hey, Teresa, thanks so much for joining us. Let me just ask you, if people want to find you, they want to, if carriers want to subscribe to the service, or distributors, or I presume that if I'm an agent or advisor and I want to buy the stuff directly, you also work. I could probably come and buy the stuff as an agent. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. People can just go to our website. It's freshfinance.us for the United States. You can kind of get an overview there of what we do. You can find out about the digital agent websites there as well. If it is an advisor or agent with a larger company and, we know we're going to have to submit to compliance, my first thing is, are you allowed to, first of all? And second of all, can I get an introduction and make this easier for everybody? That's really how it starts out. We generally come into a company because an advisor or an agent has found us. I would say 90% of the time, that's how we grow. It's interesting, but that's generally it's an advisor that reaches out, and from there we just happen to get in the door at some point. So
well, that's great. Well, hopefully we get a few more introductions as a result of our podcast, Teresa. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Will, Mark, Ramsey, thanks. And,
pleasure.
Please join us again for another episode next week of That Annuity Show.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information at thatannuityshow.com.